All right, locals, get ready because today we have a rock star in the building. You might know him as the sales whisperer, the closer's closer, and the secret weapon behind dozens of the highest performing real estate investment teams in the country. He's not just a top-tier sales trainer and podcast host with over 100,000 downloads a month. He's also a powerhouse real estate investor who's built a coaching empire, teaching others how to scale to 7 and 8 figures. Today we cover the biggest mistakes in sales, going from mentee to mentor, transactional versus consultative sales, and sales archetypes that win. To top it all off, he's on what I think to be one of the coolest missions I've heard of, to create over 100 millionaires through his coaching program. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming the founder of Stunning Homes Realty and the Real Estate Disruptors movement, Steve Trang.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege, really, to be here.
Well, no, it's the other way around. You're a gorilla in this space. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a while. And I guess I just want to jump right in. I mean, you have been seemingly like every facet of the industry. You started as an agent, then you had a brokerage, and then you got into investing, and then had a whole investment firm, and now a podcast creator. Not only a podcast creator, but a prolific podcast creator and coach. And so, was that whole journey predefined? I mean, did you have that as your plan, or did it just unfold that way for you?
No, I would say I'm a hot mess. I got massive shiny object syndrome, and I think, what's a blessing and a curse is I always have my eye out to see, like, what's the next advantage? What's the next thing? What can we grow? What's an opportunity to pursue? And so I think we just racked up businesses over the years because we've got shiny object syndrome and we're always chasing more, which we'll touch on later on. We're talking about, what hurts a lot of business owners. Sure. But yeah, it was by no means a plan. It was really just more like, hey, this helps me get to the end goal faster. At least that's the story I told myself, which wasn't necessarily true. Interesting.
Well, I'll tell for my audience, I think a lot of folks already know who you are, but to give it more context, we're both part of a group called Collective Genius, and we were together last week. And one of the things I've noticed, not just this last week, but or this week actually, days are flying by, but in prior events as well, is you have so much followership and high regard, even amongst the best investors in the country. And I find it fascinating to both watch how people watch you, and then also will be constantly mention, like, oh, this is really interesting. We should talk to Steve and see what Steve thinks about this. How did you just become such obviously first a great student of the space, and then secondarily, a thought leader and teacher?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think the biggest thing is that I've always been extremely curious. I want to know a lot about a lot of things. And this isn't one of those things where you get a lot of trivia knowledge that isn't really helpful. It's just like if I'm interested in something, I'm really interested in something. So I like to go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And so everything in real estate, I'm always curious, always wondering. Like, there are a lot of questions I have that I haven't heard anyone ask or answer the questions about what's going on with the real estate market. And so I'm always curious, what about this, what about that? And it's not a point of hyper-vigilant. I'm not someone that's operating out of fear. It's just, I guess having your butt handed to you over and over and over again, you just start to wonder, where that ball out of left field is when that ball out of left field is gonna come in, when's that black swan event that's gonna occur.
Correct.
You just never know.
So I love that you brought up curiosity. Curiosity is actually our number one core value for many of the reasons just discussed. I mean, I think that somebody who doesn't have curiosity, I'm a little bit fearful for bringing them into the organization. Honestly, it's just so important to us. But you just mentioned a couple pieces there. I mean, as you look at curiosity, is it about concern and skepticism, or is it about just wanting to understand how things work and the systems behind them? What does that mean to you?
It's very, very rarely out of fear. It's really more just. I was an engineer, right? So growing up, I was always breaking my toys. I would always take them apart and try to put it together and fail I think the most consistent failure is like, why do I still have this spring here? And
Extra
where did it
screws left
belong?
over.
Yeah, right. And so like it was just taking your toys apart, putting them back together, and failing, and then going to dad's like, hey dad, I broke this toy again. Can you help me put it back together? So I think it's just I'm always curious as to how things work, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've had a lot of success on the sales side, is because I'm really fascinated by human psychology, and so it's just. I think also like you try to figure out what works, what doesn't work. I mean, this is true in basketball. I always care about like how we play the game of basketball. Also, it probably helps that I'm not incredibly athletic. So if I'm going to do well, I have to be really good fundamentally, because I'm not going to beat you with raw talent. So I think I'm always looking for that next advantage. I think curiosity plays into that.
That's really cool. That's cool. It's funny you bring up the toy thing. That's definitely me too. I've always been something that wanted to take something apart. I want to understand how it works. I want to put it back together. Yeah, that's a really interesting connection there. So, but I want to get into sales. I mean, sales is your wheelhouse amongst other things. But why do you think, especially in the markets that we're serving, whether it be real estate investors or realtors or even in the loan side, like why is sales so difficult for small businesses? It seems like, to me, it's maybe a little more natural. I come from a sales background, and you do, but like, why do you think folks struggle with it so much?
I think where I see there's two different things. First, there's this myth that I used to believe in, which is that you either got it or you don't. Like John has the gift of gab. Of course, he's going to be great at sales. We have this false belief that a person that likes to talk would be good at sales, when now we know the person that likes to talk is actually probably harming himself in sales. So I think there's this myth that someone's got it or they don't, and so they don't pursue that route. And then the second thing, people that are naturally gifted at sales, they don't recognize they've got a blind spot. And that blind spot is that because they're naturally good at sales, they don't seek to get better. And so what happens is, like, if you look at basketball, again, using this analogy, if you're naturally gifted, you could not practice very much, and you could probably walk onto a college basketball team. You might even get recruited to a college basketball team, but you could have the most raw talent ever in history. But if you don't practice, if you don't try to get better, you're not going to cut it in the NBA, right? And so what I see far too often is people that have extreme raw talented, extreme charisma, human connection, but because they choose not to get better, because it is a choice, because they don't have the humility to want to get better, they don't have that curiosity we were mentioning a moment ago, they're trapped, and their income is just flat out limited.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think I see that same pattern in multiple areas, but like that ability to just be kind of naturally successful, whatever that endeavor is, can breed complacency, right? If you're like, well, this is happening for me, why do I need to double down and develop my skills further? What do you see as the biggest blind spot? Is there a common blind spot that you see amongst maybe naturally gifted salespeople?
Let's see. I think the biggest one is maybe it's just oversimplifying, but the lack of desire to get better. It's that I was already a top 10% when I walked into this organization, right? And so I think there's that, because confidence and arrogance is such a fine edge, and they're probably, those that don't want to get better are probably leaning on the arrogant side versus the confident side. And it's really easy to blur it. It's really easy to step from confidence into arrogance. But I think that's really what it comes down to, is that I don't have to get better. And look, I remember, like, I started in engineering. I went to grad school. I got a full ride to ASU. I got a full ride for undergrad. I got a full ride to UC San Diego. They paid me, right? I was recruited and paid to go to graduate school. So when I got my job, in the real world at Intel, they're like, hey, Steve, you should take this course. It was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a workshop. There's a guy. We paid for this instructor to come in. You should sit in that class. And my arrogance is, I've already put in my work. I've already made it here. I don't need to get better. I've got it. I'm already effective, right? Which was true to 27 years old, but was nowhere near true. Like I was just a fraction of who I am today. But at that point in my life, because there wasn't a need to get better, I had intentionally stunted my growth with arrogance.
Interesting. So what was it that hit you in the side of the head and made you have that realization and realize, like, hey, I've got a lot more growing to do?
Once I was working for myself, and my income was directly proportional to my activities and behaviors.
That'll do it, for sure.
Yeah.
I used to have this sales guy that was just a natural seller, and around the 15th or the 20th of a month, he was at quota, and I would walk by his desk, and he'd be playing Othello. This is a while back, but he'd be playing Othello on the computer, and I'd be like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm already hit my number." I'm like, "Yeah, but you could be blowing it out. I mean, I've created accelerators. I've created all these incentives for you to go further." And he's like, I'm good." It's like,
right.
Yeah, so frustrating. I think he was also younger, and I'm sure probably came to the same realization later in life. But it's really interesting to see that in people.
Yeah, I mean that problem could potentially be just his financial thermostat wasn't quite set as high.
Exactly.
Right, and he hasn't had. He may not have had clarity on his ambitions and like what he's trying to accomplish in life.
I had an IBM manager, one of my first managers, and he was rightly so asking, like, what are your goals? What do you want? Do you want a BMW? Do you want a house? What are these different things, right? And so he was artificially turning my thermostat up, and he was really trying to get me to stretch, and it had a really positive effect. But I think maybe had I not had that conversation, especially at 20-something years old, maybe I wouldn't have done that myself.
Yeah, it helps. Having a mentor helps. It always helps.
Yeah. So which leads me to, what was the moment that you decided to kind of get out of the, playing the game directly for yourself, for your company, to realizing that you should be that mentor? You have the ability to coach and want to coach.
So the desire to coach happened much later in my career after, stumbling and getting your shins kicked and so on. It was actually when I started building out my own team, my brokerage, really. And I started my brokerage, to be perfectly honest, straight out of greed. It was like, I just want to keep more of my commissions, and I don't want anybody telling me what I can and cannot do as far as marketing goes. So I started my own thing. And once I started my brokerage, I had people reach out to me. It's like, "Steve, I want to learn from you. I see what you're doing. I want to do the same thing in my business." I say, "Sure, come on in. Here are the splits, blah, blah, blah." And I would coach them. And it was at that moment that for the first time I could see people go from making $30,000 a year to $300,000 a year. And man, like, you think money is like what we're chasing after? The most addictive thing is fulfillment. Absolutely. Watching someone succeed over and over again, that is incredibly addictive. So that was when it's like, okay, coaching is for me. Now, I wanted to be a school teacher when I was younger, but I decided against it because you can't afford a lifestyle on that income. But now, coaching, teaching, I look at the same thing. I get to do what I wanted to do, and I get the fulfillment from watching people succeed.
That's cool. So it's their success that really drives you.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, love that. So was it obvious to you that should start with sales? Like, hey, as a coach, the best thing I can bring is sales, and what gave you that confidence?
Well, it wasn't sales, because I was actually pretty bad at sales at that time. I was really bad at sales up until about 2018. So for a majority of my career, I was actually really bad at sales. But what I was really good at eventually, what the skills I learned was marketing and operations and leadership. So I was really good at driving leads, right? I think, something that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, but being an engineer and doing marketing work, there's a lot of correlation, right? It's if X, then Y. Direct response marketing is black and white. You turn this lever goes up, you get a better ROI. Split test, hey, this works, that doesn't work. There's a formula to marketing. So I was pretty good at marketing. I was managing all the PPC for my buying houses, for me getting home buyer leads. for the realtors in my organization. So I was pretty decent at marketing. I learned about operations from my coach. And then leadership that's a lifelong journey, but reading a lot of John Maxwell, learning a lot from Darren Hardy. I learned a lot of leadership. So those were what I was able to teach on, but I actually wasn't that good at sales. I had some objection handlers because you need to have them in your back pocket.
Sure.
Like, the top 7 objections you're going to hear, you need to have answers for those. But also looking back, like my answers were pitiful compared to what I know now.
So I'm curious, what was the inflection moment? I mean, how did you make that transition from being average or poor to being exceptional in it?
It was actually when I hired a sales coach.
Really?
So because I'd read all the sales books, Go for No, question-based selling, the question behind the question, Jeff Gitomer's books, Brian Tracy books. I've gone through all of those, and they're all classics, and they're good. But what they were missing was how to piece it all together, how to make it seamless from the very first word you speak with them until you get the signed contract, until everything actually closes and you get paid for all your hard work. There is a map to put together, and I was learning this piece and that piece and this piece, right? Like everyone talks about closing. Closing's sexy. It was like everyone loves to talk about closing, but they don't talk about how to set up the conversation. They don't talk about planting seeds. They don't talk about, the takeaway. So, hiring a sales coach, he taught me a lot about pulling back and having the prospects chase you.
Yeah.
We talked about the tonality. We talked about preventing remorse. And so there are all these other pieces that when we had a framework, it all made sense. And then going back to what I was saying in marketing, it's a formula. It's just reverse engineering the formula. Having a sales coach allowed me to see now sales in such a way that we could reverse engineer it and teach it to anybody.
Love that. I had a similar unlock, and this goes back to my IBM days as well. I think the first few sales trainings we had was really about what we see typically is like somebody is be able to articulate their product or their value, but it wasn't until I took a solution selling model. It was Boswell's solution selling model, and it was really about understanding pain and impact of pain to then get to that point of kind of them seeing the outcome or them seeing the solution. And there was that formulaic approach that was like a massive unlock for me. I remember going from feeling out of control and scared in sales to feeling like, oh, I got this because I'm just following a model.
Yeah, it's a simple formula. I mean, so one of the things along my journey before I began to work for myself was I played a lot of poker, and the fun thing about poker is you can break down a hand. Okay, what happened? Like the first guy under the gun, left of the big blind, he raised, okay, and then this person folded, that guy raised, right? And then you can break down the whole hand, and you can based off of that figure out where you might have played that hand wrong. But it's very specific and scientific. You can say exactly what you did wrong based off of math, right? Like if you played this hand 100 times, you played this way, would you win money or lose money? We can now do the same thing with sales. Now we can say, hey, based off this action and then this action, here's the right course of action. Here's the course of action that will lead to long-term success. Or here's the other action you could take. It might work, but it probably won't, right? So we can actually break it down scientifically, which, again, I didn't have that ability prior to 18.
In the folks that you coach, and maybe in the investment space in particular, do you find that you're applying kind of transactional sales models or consultative models, or is it some hybrid of the two that you've derived?
It's very much consultative, because consultative is collaborative. And if it's collaborative, it's their idea. And if it's their idea, they'll fight you for it, right? Transactional, it's your idea. It's me versus you, Mark. And I'm going to win. It's a zero-sum game. People will fight you for it. And even if you win, you still lose because either they won't show up on closing day, or you can get a 1-star review, or something else that can go wrong, right? Yep. They might take another offer, like, hey, look, I know I signed an offer with you, but I got a higher offer. I'm going to go with that guy. So it's a very transactional conversation. That's a zero-sum game. You're not leading to long-term success, and you're not going to build a good reputation. Consultative is collaborative. And it's true in sales, it's true in parenting, it's true in leading an organization. When it's their idea, they will fight you for their idea. Right? Now, for sure, we're leading them to those conclusions where they feel like it's their idea. But it's their idea. Transactional, where it's my idea, and Mark, this is what we're going to do because your house is old and we got to get the HGTV standard and this and this and this. You don't feel good at the end of the appointment. And if you don't feel good, the likelihood of you showing up on closing day is significantly lower than it was a collaborative conversation.
Yeah. What are some of the tactics that you recommend to keep the seller in that consult or the collaborative frame?
So, instead of saying, hey, Mark, if I could pay your price, like, will you sign right now? Will you sign today?
Yeah,
It's, hey, Mark, look, the price you're looking to get is a little bit more than I was prepared to pay. If I can get that price, if I can make it happen, what would happen next? And you say, well, then I guess we're doing business. Like, well, only if you're comfortable. Right?
Yeah,
but I created this void, and you say,
create
yeah,
space
I
for
want
me.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I might say, Mark, other homeowners in the past, they wanted to work with us because they've told us that we were responsive, we operated with integrity, and we were able to give them the exact amount of money they required on the day they needed it. But I'm not sure any of those things are important to you. And you say, oh, I want the responsive. And I get the money the day I need it. Yeah, that's the one I want. So it was very much a leading conversation, but it feels to you, you got what you wanted in this conversation.
Yeah. So how do you balance that between kind of that genuine connection versus it coming across as feeling rote or just manufactured?
Well, I think it comes really from the heart, and that might sound kind of like hippy dippy, but the reality is we're helping people. If I am here to take advantage of you, then yes, for sure, it can come across that way, right? Because, so I heard something recently. You can't hide what's in your heart. I've had multiple mentors, and one of them, actually multiple, have said, the difference between influence and manipulation is your intent. So, truth be told, what I teach in sales, if it were up to me, that's not how sales would be done. If it were up to me, I show you my 5 cards, you show me your 5 cards, and we're doing business. I'll be completely open, completely transparent, and we do business together. That's my preference. That is not how humans operate.
Absolutely.
And because that's not how humans operate, then I need to run this process in a way where you feel good, where you fought me, you won, you got everything, and at the end of the day, you have a happy ending, I have a happy ending, and we're all happy and on our way, right? So it's subtle, it's hard to tell sometimes, but I think it comes down to intention. Are you genuinely trying to help the person on the other side of the table, or are you trying to take advantage of them? And I think whatever it is, whatever you feel in here, will come out in the words, will come out in the attitude, will come out in the body language. I don't think you can hide. Unless you're a true sociopath, then it's a different story.
Right. Hopefully not,
but generally speaking, I don't think you can hide what's in your heart.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of that even in the marketing outreach, right? And the lead generation outreach is kind of leading with empathy, leading with caring and a genuine desire to help. Do you find that, once you get to the sales side on your end, is a lead, or is there, quality differentiation that's tied back to the lead source or the way that was generated?
Oh, I think 100% there's a differentiation as far as the lead source. This, looking at numbers, it'd be impossible to make an argument the other way around. However, for a salesperson, it's irrelevant. So if I'm going to send a sales guy on the appointment, to me, this person raised their hand and said they're interested in selling their home. That's all the information they need to run their sales process. As a business owner, of course, I got to track, right? What is the ROI per lead source? so that I put more money that have a positive ROI and take away money from those that have a lower ROI. But
there's a lot of salespeople right now that are freaking out having you hear or hearing you say that, because I get junk leads, I get these crappy leads.
It sucks, but at the end of the day, right? Salespeople, a lot of times, are the highest paid people in the organization. Yep. I have no problems with that. I would have no issues whatsoever if my top performing sales guy was making more money than me as the owner.
For sure.
I would have no problems with that. Unfortunately, a lot of business owners would have a problem with that. I have no problems with that. If you're making, $1 million a year, I am making a lot of money, right?
Exactly.
So salespeople get paid really well. And I argue to the sales guys on our teams, the reason why you get paid so well is because your job is to run an effective sales process in every single appointment you run, regardless of where the source came from, regardless of what the qualification was. If they said they're interested in working with us, I don't care what the hell you got going on, you're running that appointment, right? So I don't believe in overqualifying appointments. EMOTA is one of those things I hear people talk about as far as the qualification or the 4 pillars. I care about one thing and one thing only. Do you need to sell? If you need to sell, we're coming over. That's it, right? I don't need to know that you have a timeline. I don't need to know what the price you want. It's all irrelevant. If I run an effective sales process and you need to sell, you will come down to the price that this needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, right. As long as you've got the other, whatever motivating factors there are, right? And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how big is the sales team that you work with today in your group?
So today it's not that big because we stopped buying houses last year, right? So right now we got three full-time salespeople in our organization today.
What do you recommend? I mean, as people are building their sales organization, oftentimes they're coming from what I call kind of like founder-led sales, right? They've been doing it themselves. They've determined what works, what doesn't work in their market, whatever. When they're going to hire their first few reps, like what should they be looking for? How do I stack the deck so that I'm, not just churning through salespeople because I don't understand how to run it, or what are you looking for there?
So I'm going to assume that they've got some resources to hire these people, right? They've got some capital. So if that's the case, then things I'm looking for is I want them to use predictive index. That's a tool I use. I won't even run a full-blown interview until you've taken the predictive index, right? And I want to see a few different things here. I want to see a person that's independent and is impatient, right? Driving is what they say on that assessment.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for on that particular assessment. So a lot of times we'll see mavericks, captains, persuaders, maybe some venturers, right? That's what I'm looking for. As far as personality goes, I want a person that's empathetic and assertive. Empathy, because again, we talk about what's in your heart. Do you want to help the other person? Will you take the time to listen to the other person? Will you actually convey to the other person that you understand the problems they're going through, right? Requires empathy. Empathy, I think a lot of people look at empathy in some ways like where it's sympathy, where it's, to be able to connect emotionally. But I actually prefer Chris Voss's definition, which is very cold and scientific and sanitized, which is the ability to communicate to the other person the information they communicated to you. Can I repeat back to you the words you said to me? That's empathy.
Listening. Yeah.
Active listening, right? So do they have the power of empathy? The other thing is assertive. I don't want aggressiveness, right? Aggressiveness is I won't take no for an answer. This is car sales, right? I don't want that. I want assertive. Hey, Mark, look, tell me yes, tell me no. Either way is okay. If this doesn't work for you, just tell me no. I'll be on my way. So I want a person that's willing to push for a yes or a no today, and they will not accept, I need to think about it. I need to run it by someone else. I want assertive. So those are two of the biggest things I'm looking for as far as characteristics in hiring a salesperson. Oh, the other thing, too, if you have the ability to, someone with a history of a track record of success in sales.
Okay, I was just going to ask if it was just attribute-based or experience. So do you prefer somebody that's been there, done that versus training them into the model that you want?
Yeah, I would prefer a track record of success because it demonstrates a couple of different things. A, do you know the work required to be successful in this endeavor? We hired a lot of young kids over the years, and I was that young kid too that someone gave a chance. And so, unfortunately, we're at a stage in our career where we don't really give the young kids a chance anymore. I'm not going to be your first stop anymore. We're looking for people that have a track record of success because there's a couple of different things. A, again, they know what's required to be successful to make $100,000 a year.
Yep.
Right? I don't have to train them life habits. I don't need to tell them to drink. Make sure you hydrate enough over the weekend when you go out drinking with your friends. So I think that's a big thing. Second thing is that someone that has a track record of success also has a higher financial thermostat. We talked about this a moment ago. If they're married and their wife requires at a bare minimum a Lexus, right, who wants to have, a nice purse or go to a good school, well, you can't make $60,000 a year doing that. So I want someone that with the track record has some obligation, some responsibility, so that a nothing burger, a goose egg for a month will never be acceptable, right? Not only will you have accountability from myself, but you get accountability when you get home.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you bring these folks in, got the right attributes, they've got some experience, how prescriptive are you? In other words, maybe we could take this down to kind of the, do you prefer scripting? Do you prefer organic conversations? Do you prefer that they follow a prescriptive process? Or I was curious, on that spectrum, where do you fall?
So I believe in frameworks. So I believe in checkpoints. So now you're going to have to learn a bunch of lines because if you don't know the phrasing, you might have a hard time pulling it together in the heat of the appointment, in the heat of the battle. One of the expressions, I don't remember where I heard it, but I've always loved it. We don't rise to the occasion, we fall to the level of preparedness. So you got to have some scripting, right? But for the most part, I care about frameworks. Can you set appropriate expectations at the beginning of the appointment? Can you extract pain and gain and motivation? Can you eliminate all decision makers, or at least identify all important decision makers in the middle of the appointment? Can you figure out a timeline in the middle of the appointment, and hopefully through pain and gain, increase urgency to reduce that timeline? And then can you negotiate effectively? Can you follow a sales and negotiation process to get at the price we need to get by helping them see that future outcome? Then can you then review the contract the way the contract needs to be reviewed? And then the last thing before you leave is, can you prevent remorse? So the scripting is mostly in setting expectations, but it's all frameworks, because what happens oftentimes, I kind of mentioned poker earlier, every poker hand is different. Every table you sit at is different. And so every sales appointment, it doesn't matter if you've talked to every pre-foreclosure in your city ever. The next person you talk to, their situation is different. And so can you go through, set expectations, find pain, find gain, find timeline, decision makers, the price, the best price that works for both parties, and then get the signed contract and prevent remorse before you walk out the door.
Yeah. If you're a sales manager, how do you go about evaluating each of those steps? Is that call recording? Are you tracking just tick marks against each of those measures? How do you optimize that rep and continue to refine that skill so that they're following that framework effectively?
So we actually have a printout, a sheet where, I don't know if you want me to talk about, something that we give away.
Sure.
But one of those things we look at is, did they do all the things we say to do in an appointment, and did they violate any of the things we told them not to do at the appointment? So, we love open-ended questions. How? What? We hate close-ended questions. Is this?
Yeah.
Or what's the other one? Right? Okay? All that stuff. So we literally score, not score as in like out of 100, but we tally which things did you do well on that call, which is great, attaboys. Which of the 40 things that we say don't do in a sales appointment, we could tally it every time you do it. And we could say, hey, here are things that you're doing right now that we need to eliminate from your conversations. So that's how we get them to improve. That's through call review. Long answer to your question.
No, that's great. Are you using like AI tools to evaluate kind of the transcripts and do some of that analysis for you? I mean, that seems like an avenue potentially.
Not yet, but I had 2 or 3 people literally beg me to do it. SEG. So we had Stephanie Betters, Brad Chandler, and Casey Ryan. All 3 of them were like, hey, you need to add this. Like, okay, well, I mean, supply and demand. If they need it, then we have one more thing to sell. So yes, it's happening.
Cool. Full disclosure, I mean, the reason I asked that question, it just sounded very similar to, my own need. I mean, as a podcast host, I take my transcripts and I run it through a pretty elaborate prompt that I've created, and it evaluates me then on my transitions and my questions, my open-ended versus closed. I mean, all these different things, and I find it's a good tool, and it allows me to, if I want, to lean in and try to learn and to improve and become better. So yeah, it was an interesting parallel there.
Yeah.
So since we're talking AI a little bit, what do you see as kind of the future impact of AI on sales? I mean, do you see this as something that ultimately replaces sales? Is it an augmentation to sales? What's your view there?
Yeah, I think in the immediate future, it's going to harm the most the inside salespeople, because inside sales is, what's the word I'm looking for? An excellent inside salesperson cannot be replaced, right? An excellent inside salesperson is incredibly valuable to an organization. But the average salesperson is easily replaceable. And so I think that with AI being healthy with zero drama 24/7, 365, it's going to cause problems for the inside sales industry. I don't think there's much. I think that battle is pretty much a matter of time, probably within the next 6 to 18 months. I think a lot of sales, lower ticket sales, anything less than $1,000, we've been able to sell a lot of things for under $1,000 through just websites.
Yeah.
If you plus that with AI, that's probably going to change it. And so then we might see, like, if it's $1,000, can AI do it? $2,000, can AI do it? $5,000, can AI do it? I think we're getting to that point, right? And so that's probably 12 to 24 months until there's going to be massive collateral damage inside the sales industry. So, yeah, I do think it's going to be disruptive in our space.
Yeah. And I think in the near term, I mean, even if it was using that concept of your framework, I mean, if something was riding along on your call and able to prompt you like, hey, dude, you're asking too many closed-ended questions, or, it's like in real time to help you improve. I mean, I think that's opportunity. I'm of the same mindset that I don't see kind of a wholesale swap of especially great inside salespeople. And of course, you can't really do much about outside. You're not going to be able to replace a door knocker, but yeah.
Not a door knocker, but someone that is accustomed to having their appointment set for them.
Yeah.
Might be a little bit more concerned.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about disruptors and the work you're doing there. I mean, with the podcast and the events and the coaching, I think that's really cool. You're able to touch a lot of people with your knowledge and experiences. One of your goals is to help 100 people become millionaires. I'm curious how you're doing on that journey and what's in front of you there.
So, truth be told, it's something I'm extremely passionate about, but we've done a very poor job of measuring it. And so, beginning of this year, we've been intentional once again on actually measuring it. So I'm reaching out to every mentee to see where they're at, because I was actually surprised. We've had over 250 people come through our programs. Not to mention their team, just 250 people, right? So reaching out to them and talking to see how they're doing. And just the first handful of conversations is pretty cool. Like more than half of them are millionaires,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So that's pretty awesome. So I'm pretty sure we're past 100. But one thing we did wrong, we tried to automate it. We tried to, through emails and so on, and ask people where they're at. And we had some people respond. But I have, admittedly, a horrific BS detector. So, and what I mean by that is, one of the requirements to come onto the podcast is you need to tell me why I should have you on the show and then prove to me that what you said is true. Because there are a lot of people that can make claims, and I can't tell when someone makes a claim whether it's true or not. I really can't. And so that's the reason why I always have people validate and verify their claims before coming onto the show. Well, the other part of that with the millionaire is like, everyone said, not everyone, a lot of people say, hey, I'm a millionaire. It's like, fantastic. I want to create this plaque for you, do, some additional stuff for you, record some content, create content around it. Would you mind sharing, having your accountant share this or, a bank statement, whatever, and then the trail goes cold.
Yeah.
And so it was discouraging. I didn't put enough effort into it to solve that problem. But like we had so many people say, I'm a millionaire, and like, hey, can you prove it? And then the trail goes cold. So
yeah,
we're doing a better job again. We're now intentionally reaching out to people, having conversations, and measuring it now.
Seems like such a common issue in this industry in particular. There's so many gurus that talk the talk and have never done it, right? Or they certainly
Right.
haven't done it to achieve their million. And that said, just knowing you and seeing the impact and the way that you connect with folks, at the CG level and otherwise, I'm confident that you've minted a lot more millionaires than you're aware of. And
Yeah.
So as you, I don't know if you refine and tighten up that measurement or otherwise, I mean, what do you see as kind of the next goal there?
Well, so we've modified our mission internally. So the podcast has always said 100 millionaires, but internally it's just to create millionaires. So that's our KPI, right? So, how many millionaires are we creating? So the focus hasn't changed. We're doing the same thing, which is we're just going to move the milestone. That's how it works as an entrepreneur, right? Like here's the goal. All right, we hit the goal. Let's increase the goal. So we're doing the same thing here. And it's it's our key purpose indicator. It's something that's important to me. It's something that, I think the country had lost its way for a little bit. I think we're doing a little bit better today than we were, a couple years ago. But, there was a point, I don't know when, in the last 10, 15 years where profit became a bad word. And so the reason why I pushed this is because, capitalism is really true to my heart. I came from, my grandparents lost everything due to communism twice. My parents lost everything due to communism. And so I'm very, very pro-capitalist. And that's the reason why, that particular metric is so important to me.
Did that happen when you were a child? I mean, were you around to see the impact of that?
Mm-mm. No, I never
parents?
personally experienced it. I was born in a refugee camp because we fled communism, but I have never personally experienced communism. But like I know, like my dad was in prison for trying to flee because like part of communism is you're not allowed to leave. So my dad was in prison. His brother was in prison. His second oldest brother fled Vietnam in a helicopter to Hong Kong. Like it's crazy, right? Something that's amazing, supposedly, but they have to keep you within the borders because you're not allowed to leave it. So it's that creating millionaires is so important to me because I want to make sure as a country, right? Like, hey, let's focus on like lifting others up versus making everyone equal.
I love that. I mean, it obviously had a profound impact on your life.
Yes.
That's really cool. I have similar mission there, right? Where mine's not necessarily tied to millionaires, but the through line in my career has been around helping small local businesses, compete and win. Because I'm a big believer that just entrepreneurs drive the economy certainly, but more than that, they're like the glue that holds local communities and cultures together. And for that reason,
absolutely,
like I'm all about helping those people succeed.
Yeah.
So I like what you're doing there.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Steve, how can folks find out more about you and start following you if they're not already?
Yeah, so I think Instagram is probably where they'll get most of my content. So steve.trang, steve.trang. We have our podcast. It's on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. It's Disruptors. Now, there are other disruptors. So if you do Disruptors and Steve Trang, you'll find it. And then what I was mentioning earlier about the call review, if you text the words script, S-C-R-I-P-T, script, S-C-R-I-P-T, to the phone number 33777, you'll get my active listening book. You'll get that call review tool I mentioned. You'll get our ideal appointment script and some additional recordings of stuff that I've done over the years. So hopefully it's helpful. But just because we were talking earlier about call reviews, that's a tool I created for my team, for my clients, and anyone that's listening here to get it for free. There's no additional charge.
That's really nice of you. Thank you. I'm sure people will find a lot of value from that. Definitely go take Steve up on that and get that tool and put it to use. Yeah, thanks so much. It's been a great pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, it was a pleasure being on. I appreciate you asking these questions. You're a great interviewer, and hopefully everyone that's listening can get value out of it.
Thanks. Yeah, if you found value in this episode, please subscribe or make sure to share it with a friend or colleague that can also get some value from it.